So if you're looking to build a splashback like this in your van, I'm going to show you the tools I used, the tiles I used and the techniques I used, including the cost involved in building a splashback like this in your very own van. So I am going to stick straight to the wall, because when I just had a little look and I thought, right, by the time I put a backing piece on and then my trim on that you're going to have a little ridge at the back. And even though there's techniques you can get to get rid of that little edge, I could caulk it or whatever, it's just, I think they're going to sit really far out and I don't want the tiles to look really fat and far out. So I'm actually going to stick them direct to the wall surface. Now the two other things I've got is this champagne aluminium trim and a standard white plastic PVC trim for the edges of the tiles. Originally, I think I was going to go for the white, but looking at it, it looks a little bit scuffed from the Screwfix depot. And I'm just thinking further on down the line, is it going to be one of those things that could get scuffed or look a bit weathered? So I'm hoping that this champagne aluminium trim is going to hold up a little bit better, and I'm going to go with that. The first stage is marking out the straight edge to work from. I've marked my area with some frog tape and also run a few pencil lines where the tiles should sit. I've bent my first corner on the trim and made it slightly longer than I need, as I can cut this down later. I can then mark out where the other corner needs to be. To make my corner in the trim, I'm bending it to the shape rather than cutting it, as I'll get a nice smooth rounded corner rather than a sharp edged angle. I do this by cutting a section from the metal trim that sits just beneath the tile. Then I score a line with a sharp knife in the trim edge. This will help when creating that 90-degree angle. Now the trim's cut down to size, I'm using my square to get a 90-degree angle. With my pencil lines and guides in place, I use a couple of really small screws to keep the edge trim in place. These are the tiles that I'm going with, and they are mini subway tiles. So they're like the ones you get in bathrooms and kitchens and things like that, but they're a mini version. And the reason I've gone for a mini version is because this van, even though it looks big, is actually tiny compared to a normal house and a normal kitchen, or most normal kitchens. So if I was to put a regular size subway tile in here, this kitchen is immediately, and this whole van is immediately going to shrink in terms of the optical size of how it appears. So whereas if I put a mini tile in, it's going to look more in proportion to the rest of the van, to the kitchen and the rest of it, sort of the cupboards and stuff. So hopefully it will give the illusion of giving space. There are many different ways that you can stick your tiles to your backing board, and I've opted to use Sikaflex EBT. Sikaflex is a high-strength, multi-purpose, permanently elastic adhesive, sealant and filler. I've used this product on a variety of projects throughout the van, including securing my solar panel and skylight to the roof. It's an extremely strong and versatile product, which maintains its elasticity. This means it will allow my tiles to continually move with the vibrations of the van without breaking or cracking. I'm Sikaflexing each of the tiles generously, but I'm making sure to keep clear of any of the edges to allow when I push the tiles for the splurge to come out but not to go into the gaps. I apply pressure to each of the tiles, keeping an eye on any overspills, as this will need to be removed immediately. I use my spacers to maintain even gaps and my pencil lines to make sure I'm maintaining my straight edges. I'm using a wet tile cutter I borrowed from a friend to trim down the small end pieces, but you could also use a standard tile cutter. This particular tile saw is from Screwfix, and if you have intricate areas to cut, I'd opt for the wet tile saw like this. Make sure the spacers don't touch any Sikaflex. I continuously move my spacers to make sure that they were always free. Okay, so we're getting on to the grouting. Now I've gone for this one, which is Grout 3000, highly flexible, versatile, fast setting, wall and floor grout. Now the reason I've gone for this particular one is after doing all my research, as we all know, grouts come in various different forms, and I've gone for this one because this can also be used in swimming pools. So I'm thinking if it can deal with the pressure and the water submersion in a swimming pool, and it can deal with the flexibility of people walking on it if it's on a floor, this is going to be the stuff hopefully that is going to do the job for me. Because in a van, as I've mentioned, you've got a lot of movement. You've also got temperatures to deal with. You've got the internal, external, the, you know, as much as we might insulate and whatever, we still have, in the winter time, really cold, freezing, maybe some damp weather within the UK. So the last thing I want is my tiles getting mouldy or mildew, or the grout softening over time because it just can't deal with the environment. So that's one of the things that you need to look at, is look at the product that's going to suit your environment. So this is why I've gone for this one. The next thing is read the instructions on your particular brand of grout. Now I'm definitely one that's, you know, that's my biggest downfall. I hate reading instructions. I'd rather just get on and do this stuff. But the thing is, you could muck up your entire job if you don't read the actual instructions that are specific to your product. So read what it is that your product's telling you to do and then work within it. Top edges that meet the aluminium trim I'm leaving free from grout as much as possible, as these edges will be filled with silicone sealant when finishing. Now the grout is in between all the grooves, I've removed as much of the excess as possible whilst I allow it to set slightly. After giving it a short setting time, I run over the tiles with a damp sponge in a circular motion, and I give a final tidy to the grouted lines with a fingertip. Again, giving it its designated drying time, I now move on to buffing the tiles to a high shine with some dry paper towel. Okay, so we're on the final stages now of the backsplash, and we're getting onto the silicone sealing. Now, as you can see in the background, what I've got here is a layer of frog tape that's going all the way around the tiles, but also on the very edge of my aluminium trim. Because what I don't want to happen is to have done all that hard work and to get to the last stage of the build and then have a really messy, splodgy line, especially on such a small area. If you just run a raw finger around that, you're going to get quite a fat line all the way around, quite a fat and uneven line. So by putting the frog tape up, what that does is hopefully gives us a nice clean edge to work to. Now, in terms of the silicone that I'm going for, I've gone for this one. Okay, and I got it from Screwfix. Now, the reason I chose this particular one is, one, because of its weatherproof capabilities. It's able to deal with like extreme ups and downs in terms of its temperatures and internal, external type stuff, but also because of its high movement capabilities. Like, can you see that? I don't know if that was the bit I was pointing out. There you go. High movement capabilities. As I keep going on with everything in the van, the reason I originally chose Sikaflex was because I know I've used Sikaflex throughout the van build, and it's been absolutely amazing at just being the most strong adhesive product I think I've ever come across. So because I didn't want the tiles to ever come off, especially to fall down on my, glass hobtop, that's the reason why I went for Sikaflex, because I know it's movable. The same thing with the grout that I went for. I went for something that was really tough, really extreme, used for internal, external. You can walk on it, it can go on walls, you can lay tiles over tiles. It is like one of the strongest tile grouts out there. And so that is again why I went for that, because that had its high flexible capability. So the last thing I'm going to do is scrimp on the end bit and just do any old silicone around the edge. I've gone for one of the top of the range ones that I can find. It was almost double the price in Screwfix over the others, but I went for it because of its high movement capabilities. So when you're looking at your products, just think about what you need it for and how you're going to use it, and then choose the one that's best suited. Don't choose it just based on price, choose it on what it's suited for. Now, again, going back to the finish on the tiles, I've run this layer of frog tape, like I said. One of the other things I've done is got my little squirty bottle, which has got some warm water in it and a couple of drops of fairy liquid. So as I run my beading around, when I run my finger edge across, if I spray a little bit of soapy fairy liquid water on that, it helps to just really smooth out that line, but also helps the excess to just fall away. It doesn't stick to anything, it just falls away, and we can just wipe it off with some cloth. So hopefully we're going to end up with a lovely clean line all the way around. Now, the bottom and the top of the beading, where the tiles meet the upstand and the top of that sort of ridge that I mentioned on the aluminium trim, they're a little bit deeper. So they're going to need probably 2 lines, 2 runs to pass it to get those to fill out to the same level. I remove the tape whilst the silicone is still wet. I then use a small piece of cloth to remove any small bits which may have touched the tiles or the trim, but stay away from those freshly siliconed lines. So the backsplash is finally complete. All the silicone is now done, and I think it looks absolutely fantastic. So one thing that I did actually do is when I removed the tape, I succumbed to the temptation and I run my finger across the line without any tape to hold that edge, and it did splurge out a little bit and create a really uneven looking line right in the centre, and I just couldn't live with that after doing all this hard work. So if you're like me, don't succumb to that temptation. Try not to. Allow it to set a little bit. What I did was I run another layer of tape, a fresh layer, and then a fresh layer of silicone, and just give it a final wipe, which has brought that line back. So don't worry if you've made that mistake, you can bring it back, but just try not to succumb to that temptation in the first place, because it will spoil it and just make it look horrendous, and you don't want to put all that hard work to waste. But you can salvage it is what I'm saying if you have done that. I hope you've liked the video. I hope you've enjoyed this little project that we've done here. If you have, please give it a thumbs up and a like, and please do consider subscribing. I love doing stuff like this. I'm really trying to grow my channel, and your support would mean the world. So please do consider subscribing. If you want to know more about this entire build and stuff like this, I've got a complete build series on my channel, which will take you back to when I first bought this van fresh from an auction, and how it was as a standard Transit Mark 8. How I put in the skylight, the windows, built all these cabinets from scratch, putting in the gas and the electrics and all the other bits, solar and whatever else. So if you want to know more about this project, go back. There's a whole series of videos that can keep you entertained. So until then, in the meantime, because this is a motorbike channel, don't forget, safe riding, safe driving, happy adventures, and I'll see you in the next one.